Thank you, Chairman, and thanks, Minister, and thank you to your very large team from the Health Services for coming here this morning. We had a very interesting session with HICWA, which other members have alluded to yesterday evening. I suppose I come at this from a kind of a personal point of view because I've met the families in Portlaoise. I brought Roisin and Mark Malloy in here to meet with members of the Health Committee last January at their request after the Primetime Investigates documentary. And at the time I was 8 months pregnant, and I subsequently had my baby, and I actually ended up having precisely the same experience as the Malloys, precisely. I had very difficult labour, and my baby's heart rate dropped and all the rest of it. Thankfully, I was under the fantastic care of Professor Mick Foley and an amazing team in Holles Street. But all that went through my mind during that experience was, thank God I'm in Holles Street. The staff, the care, everything, the attention to detail, and ultimately when things went really, really seriously wrong, they saved my baby's life. And the reality is that, you know, if the level of care that I received had been afforded to the families in Portlaoise, their babies would also be alive. And that's a really stark reality, and one that I find very deeply upsetting, frankly. So I really hope, Minister, and I absolutely take you at your word that you don't intend this to be another report that sits on a shelf, but there have been so many relating to the health service and relating to maternity services over the last number of years, that it's difficult to have confidence that anything will be different on this occasion. I have a couple of specific questions. One in relation to the perinatal mortality statistics, which are completely inaccurate. That was found in Tony Holohan's report last year. And I want to know what precise plans are in place now to make the reporting of the deaths of babies in our maternity services mandatory, and that there will be actual criminal liability for hospitals and individuals who don't report. I think that's really important. A voluntary system doesn't work. The other question I have is in relation to open disclosure. I note that the policy is now actually being rolled out throughout a very substantial number of hospitals, but it is again a voluntary process. When is the legislation going to appear? What do you envisage, Minister, in terms of the mandatory nature of that? And again, you know, what sort of sanctions will be in place for those who don't participate fully and openly in that? I have major concerns at the fact that so many of these issues were raised directly by parents with the HSE, with senior individuals within the HSE throughout 2012 particularly, and really there was no satisfactory response. I want to ask specifically, what is the role of the National Incident Management Team? They expressed, to my knowledge, concerns internally in November, December 2012. It wasn't acted upon. I know that letters were written directly to you, Mr O'Brien, by parents involved in Portlaoise, particularly Mark and Roisin Malloy, a number of letters which received vague responses, and really nothing, as we know, was done until after the documentary. And it just really frustrates me that people who are responsible for the care of our citizens actually abdicate responsibility until it appears on an RTE programme and the scandal is unearthed in that fashion. There's a public humiliation, if you like, of the services, and then people start to own up and become well, maybe answerable is too strong a word. They're not necessarily answerable, but start to express remorse. And I want to know the HICWA inquiry, and we discussed this yesterday with HICWA as well. You know, there were failures identified locally, regionally, and nationally. Now we learned yesterday evening that 4 members of the local staff in the hospital have been referred for disciplinary, or will be referred for disciplinary sanction. What about at the regional level, and what about at the national level? Who is responsible? Are you responsible, Mr O'Brien? Do you intend to fall on your sword? Do you intend to account for and be answerable for what has happened, and the fact that repeated letters and requests for meetings and so on were ignored by the families until the Primetime Investigates documentary? Because somebody has to answer at a national level for what is a really dysfunctional, negligent system which seems to encourage cover-up rather than transparency.
Thank you.